What's up, dudes, dudettes? So today we're going to be talking about playing. I feel bad now with the dudes, dudettes thing because it's so much like Cats and Kittens. And I just finished watching that and now I don't want to say it anymore. Let me know in the comments if it strikes a chord. Anyway, so today we're going to be talking about slide guitar. I'm going to try to get through this as quick as possible because there's a lot of information and I don't want this to be like a 30-minute long, 40-minute long video. Here we go. In today's lesson, first thing we're going to talk about is picking a slide. Next thing we're going to be talking about is picking a guitar. After that, we're going to talk a little bit on tuning. I'll get into that later. Once we're done with all those first 3 steps, then we'll get into some playing and how to get into a little bit more playing stuff. When we do the playing, I got some techniques, some drills, some chords, and a few licks at the end of the video. Alright, let's get started. Alright, so the first thing you want to do is pick your guitar. And the best guitar that you can pick for a beginner slide guitar player is going to be probably the worst guitar in your guitar collection. It's the one that has really high action. It's so cheap it's not worth taking to get set up. You want high action for a beginner slide guitar. Eventually you can lower the action back down, but you don't have to. If you have a guitar that's very specific for slide guitar, then just pick one with high action and run with that. If you want to learn how to play slide but on your regular guitar, then you are going to have to practice by lowering your action incrementally until you get better. But that's later on down the road. The next thing you're looking for in picking a guitar for slide guitar is fretboard radius. I think for starting off, you want to have a decent curve on your fretboard radius. The curvature of the fretboard. Having a flat fretboard radius isn't necessarily bad, but at a beginner level you're going to end up hitting a bunch of other strings as you're sliding up and down, and that's going to create extraneous noise, which could be good because you could learn to mute a little faster that way. If you have a rounded fretboard radius, because you'll have to cant the slide as you go, if you do that, you're going to have less friction on the other strings that you're not playing. Especially if you're like playing high notes, you're not going to have any friction on your low notes and vice versa. So it's just some extra noise that you don't have to worry about making. As you get better at muting, you might want to switch back to a flatter radius, because if you have a flatter radius, then you can play licks that you otherwise couldn't play, like octaves between your 1st and your 6th string. Because with a rounded fretboard, you would have to put a lot of pressure on the strings in order to get both of those notes ringing out. But if you have a flat fretboard, it's the same pressure as you normally would. Alright, I gotta stop clapping. String gauge. So string gauge, my suggestion is anything 11s and up. You don't want too heavy of a bottom string though, because if your bottom string is too heavy, like if it's like 72s or something like that, if you're playing a light slide, you're gonna get a little less sustain out of that, and I'll get into that in a little bit. So the second thing we're gonna be talking about is picking a slide. So your slide, on any of these points really, just be willing to change your mind later on. Don't commit yourself wholeheartedly to it, because you don't know what you're actually going to like until you've tried pretty much everything. But when it comes to picking a slide, there's different things to consider. The first thing is, which finger do you want to play on? If you want to still be able to play with your fingers, you might be looking at your ring finger and your pinky finger. If you want to just dedicate solely to playing slide, then go with your middle finger. The ring finger and the middle finger are usually the #1 choices, especially for beginners, because you tend to have more control in that position. So here, I'll put it in my ring finger, because you're not gonna be waggling all over the place like you would in the pinky position. But here you can kind of squeeze it with both fingers and be conscious of that. Next is the material and kind of the tone you're going for. So when it comes to material, you're looking at options. Pretty much just about anything goes. I've heard of people playing slide guitar with wooden slides. But you've got, my favorite is brass, but you could also play with glass, ceramic, and steel. And with the brass slide, your tone's going to be a little bit brighter. With the steel slide, it's going to be more mid-range. Glass is kind of a mid-low, and ceramic is definitely your deepest tonality. But other things to consider is the texture of the slide itself. If it's real smooth, actually that's not my smooth one. There it is. If it's real smooth, then it's going to have more of a singing tonality to it. But if it's kind of roughed up on the edges, then these are my roughest ones, then it's going to be a little bit more gritty. And then the last thing to consider is mass. The heavier the slide is, then the more sustain you're going to be able to get out of it. Also the mass of your strings, like I was talking about before, the mass of your strings will also determine how much sustain you're getting out of it. Like if you have a low mass slide, and you'll notice that your higher strings will ring out for longer than your lower strings will. Just some points of observation that I've made while learning myself. All right, next is tuning. So now we got to pick which tuning you're going to go in. There's tons of options out there for tuning, but 4 of them are the most used. The first 2 I'm going to talk about are open D and open E. Now open D is essentially it's a tune, it's where you tune the guitar to a D chord. So there's only 3 notes on all 6 strings. So when you're playing it open, it's D, A, D, F sharp, A, D. Yeah. And then that translate, I know this is theory talk, but we're going to talk about intervals in here because it's important to think about the intervals in this part. The D is the root, so that's going to be your 1. The A is the 5th of the chord, so that's going to be your 5. It's the 5th interval in the scale, in the major scale of the D major scale. So 1 and 5, and then you're back to your D, so you're back to 1, so 1, 5, 1, and then you have the F sharp, which is, that's a bug. Then you have the F sharp, which is the 3rd interval in the D major scale from the root. So if you start from D and you go through the D major scale, 3 notes into it, you're going to find your F sharp. So 1, 5, 1, 3, and then you have a 5 again, so another A, and then a 1 again. That's your D. And then with your open E, it's the same intervals for all of them. It's just you've pulled it up a whole step. So you know how when you go to drop D on your guitar, you tune your low E string down a whole step until it hits the D note. Well, it's the opposite of that, except on every single string. All right, next is open G and open A. I don't think open A really gets much love out there, but open G definitely does, and it's definitely worth learning. We're talking about like Keith Richards and like Robert Johnson, George Thorogood. That's another one. There's tons of music out there for the slide guitar. Well, Keith Richards didn't play slide, but he did play an open G. So the intervals for this one are a little weird because on your highest and your lowest string, it's not your root string. It's not your root note. It's the 5th. So it goes 5, 1, 5, 1, 3, 5. So for G, that's D, G, D, G, B, D. And for open A, it's E, A, E, A, C sharp, E. And it's that easy. My suggestion for picking an open tuning is finding an artist who you want to learn your first song from, and then pick that tuning. Pick the tuning that they used for that song. Another note on the open G, and this is probably a reason why it gets used a lot, is it's the easiest to switch from standard to, because all you have to do, you drop D and then you move your string sets. You know how when you go into drop D by ear, you play both your E and your D, and then you match them up. You can do the same thing, but on your next highest string set. So now you're going to be playing your A and your G, and you're going to tune your A down until it hits G. And then you're going to play your D and your high E, and you're going to tune that down until they're both in tune with each other, and bam, you're there. So it's just 1, 2. This one takes a little while, because unless you have like geared ratio tuners or whatever, like that one takes a little while. But yeah, that's how you do it, and it is the easiest tuning to get into, in my opinion. And for most of the stuff, because you tend to avoid playing the bass note unless you're playing on your own, but if you're playing in a band, you tend to avoid playing that bass note anyways, because it's a fifth interval and it's not a root position. You can just leave the E string alone, and then you've only got to tune 2 strings, and you're in open G. Just forget about your E string like you're Keith Richards. All right, so next we're gonna get into playing, and yeah, let's do that. So first thing I want to talk about is pressure. When you're applying pressure with your slide to the string itself. If you dig in too hard, what's going to happen is you're going to do what's called fretting out, and that sounds like this. Now, if it's playing the same thing, if you just, all you have to do is just very lightly touch it. The frets serve no purpose for the slide guitar. If you have a completely dedicated slide guitar, you don't even need frets, other than to know where you're at on the guitar. Next thing we're going to talk about is left hand muting. So left hand muting, what you need to learn how to do is to lay all or at least one of your fingers, on the strings behind the slide. And the reason you want to do that is because if you don't, these notes are going to ring out and it's not going to sound great. You can do it as an effect, but that's not something you need to be working on if you're just starting to play slide guitar. If you're just starting to play slide guitar, you need to start working on muting behind the slide to keep those notes from ringing out. Alright, so next thing we're going to talk about is right hand muting. When I refer to right hand muting, what that means is that every string you don't want to play or specifically want to be quieted needs to have a finger on it, because the slide is going to rub up against that string and it's going to make extra noises that you don't want coming through. Alright, so the way I do this is I use my thumb to mute any string in these top lower strings that I don't want ringing out. And sometimes I'll even move that down to the middle 3 strings here. I don't ever really use my thumb to mute the high string. What you do to mute the high strings is very much like Travis picking. You're going to place a finger on each string. Now, when you probably learned how to do Travis picking, you learned to float your fingers above the strings so that you had like a nice singing tone. how to leave them planted. And return them back once you're done playing the note for exactly as long as you want it to play. I have a drill that I think will come in handy for you guys. Alright, and so this drill is super simple. So all you're gonna do is, in a triplet pattern, you're gonna slide up and back on the first, on your low string, and then back and up and back on your second string. So back, like that. And you set a metronome, and you let the metronome run. Remember to count it as triplets, so triple it, triple it, triple it, triple it, triple it, triple it. I fucked that up, but whatever, y'all get the point. And then you move up a fret. Sorry, this image is gonna be upside down, but it's gonna be the way you're looking at it. When you're fretting, you don't put it behind the string like you would play, right? Or behind the fret like you would play. You put it right over. Once you have the half step down, you're going to do a whole step instead. And then you can extend it out and even go into the four frets, and then 5 frets, 6 frets, and then move your tempo up faster so you get a little bit more accurate. This is a great drill. It takes like 10 minutes to do. If you do this drill, I promise you will get better at playing slide guitar. Okay, anyways, so gonna move on. Chords. So the chords I want to talk about. Remember, it's tuned to a chord, which is great because the slide is straight. So every fret is its own chord. So this is an open E. So there's your G chord, your A chord, your B chord, your D chord, and then you're back to your E chord. And those are, in my opinion, the most important chords. And it's important to learn to play all of them. So I would just slide up to them, kind of like I was doing. So from nothing, from 0, or from 1 rather, you're gonna slide up to 3. Slide up to 5, slide up to 7, slide up to 10, and then up to 12. The reason those are the most important ones are because you've got your 1, your 4, and your 5 in there, which it means you can play pretty much any blues song. But you also have this G major, which is important because I don't want to get into a bunch of theory stuff, but even in the E major key, a G major can pop up, especially in blues, a lot. Or a G5, you just don't play the third interval string, because you only got one of those. So. Oh yeah. The G chord's in a lot of songs, even if the key is in E. The George Thorogood song, it's not in the key E, by the way, it's in G. But like I said before, once you know how to play one, being able to change to a different tuning is super easy. All right, moving on. So we've got the chords, and yeah, I guess it's time to talk about vibrato. So there's other vibrato and sliding. So when you're sliding, you can slide fast, you can slide medium, or you can slide slow. Depending on how much tension you want to put into the lick, which is super cool. It's cool to be able to do that. And another cool thing you can do is vibrato. To get a short vibrato, basically you're just going to shake your hand. Short, fast vibrato. Just give it a little wiggle if you want a slow vibrato. And if you want a medium vibrato, it's the same wiggle, but the wiggle's gonna be a little more wiggly, I guess. And then the same thing, you're just gonna move the slide now back and forth for a wider vibrato. But you can also very easily control the speed. When you're doing vibrato, it's kind of a feel thing. All right, so let's talk about licks. All these licks I'm gonna play come from my intro solo to my new single that drops tomorrow, and that is my new song Shake, and that is gonna be an open E. Feel free to steal licks too from the intro solo that I played. That was an open G. Go for it if you so desire. So the first lick we're going to talk about is what you're going to do is you're going to slide from the 10 to 12 on your high string, your high D. And then you're going to work your way one string at a time up to your middle D string. So you're gonna go 10 to 12 twice, and then back to 10. On the B string, you're going to slide down from 12 to 10. And then you're gonna slide up from 10 to 11. On your G sharp string, and then you're going to finish on 12, sliding from 11 to 12 with vibrato. Anyways, let's move on to the second lick I'm going to show you. So this lick, there's no slide in this, but this is a Keith Richards technique. That's where I stole it from anyways. Alright, and so what you're doing here is you're going to bar your 5th fret, and then you're going to play like you're playing an E major 7 bar chord, right? With your middle finger and your ring finger. Your ring finger on the 7th fret of the B string, your low B string, and then on the 6th fret of your G sharp string. And then it's down. And that's how I get from my 5 chord out. And then the last one, so this is also a slide, another slide lick. This is a good one to practice muting because you're going to play, but you're not going to let it ring out, because if you let it ring out, it doesn't sound as cool as if you mute it directly after. So what you're going to do to start off the lick is you're going to slide to the 12th fret from somewheres up here, doesn't matter where. And then you're just going to play back and forth between your B string and your E string. And when you're done with that pattern, you're going to slide. You're going to slide up to your 16th fret. And you're going to do that twice, but on your way back, just before you slide back up, you're going to hit that B string again. Or not. You can just not, and it still sounds cool. I do, just out of habit. But whatever you do, make sure, if you're going to hit it, make sure that you mute it right away. Because otherwise, you get that extra note in there that kind of clashes a little bit. Alright guys, thank you. I hope this video was helpful. If not, and maybe you've got some better ideas, let me know. I'm all down for reshooting it later on and trying to get some better advice out there. And leave your advice in the comments if you practice slide guitar or learn slide guitar and you've got some information out there that'll help somebody just picking it up. I think that's about it. I'm gonna play that solo for you guys and that'll be it. So after that, bye guys.
Mm-hmm.